Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today, Steve Nudelberg, is an author, expert sales trainer, biz dev expert, keynote speaker, and serial entrepreneur. And you may be familiar with his book and his podcast, Confessions of a Serial Salesman. I know he's got a new name for the podcast now. We'll get to that in a second. And his core philosophy is to ignite individuals and teams by enhancing their awareness about small yet powerful changes they can make instantly to instantly sharpen individual performance, making yourself as best as possible. That's what it's all about. And his specialty within organizations centers on creating daily sales processes, sales acceleration and development, along with social selling and relationships. I mean, relationships in the name of the game. And Steve and I are going to dig into that. We're going to talk about storytelling, conversation, pipeline development, all these critical roles and pieces of being awesome at sales and marketing. And I'm excited to talk to Steve about his career story, LinkedIn, working with his sons, and a whole lot more. So let's dig in. Steve Nudelberg, welcome to the podcast, my man.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that great introduction. I want to pinch myself. Is that really me? Wow, man. Not, when I look back over the years and all those hard times, boy, maybe it paid off.
You know what, man? And I think that's why I do it live, because you know what? I don't care who you are. You'd love to hear your story, right? I mean, it's a good thing. We're human there. So let's, before we get into the really, really good stuff, I think it's important to bring everyone up to speed on who the heck this dude, Steve Nudelberg, is sitting on the other side of my screen. So I'd love if you could share, a nice little summary of kind of your career story. I mean, we're not going to go back to medieval times or the dinosaurs. We're not going to be.
I was born.
But let's give everyone kind of a high level overview here, please.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate that from as far back as I can remember, I put a lot of value in people. And if you want to be good in sales, you got to be good with people. So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So I kind of learned that at the dinner table, it was loud, it was energetic, it was a review of the day. You had to perform every single day. So it was great. I really enjoyed it. I loved the pace. I gravitated towards it. My grandparents and my parents were in the ladies' shoe business. So I had fashion, I had sales, I had all of this stuff happening in front of me. And so I've been fortunate. I've gravitated towards opportunities where I can grow revenue. I became an entrepreneur. And it's really funny because growing up, I'm going to be 60 next month. When I grew up, the word entrepreneur didn't even exist, man. It was like I just moved into a place where I wanted to control my destiny. I was always invited into opportunity where people said, hey, we got a challenge. We got to grow revenue. Can you help us do that? So my whole career has been littered with lots of failures and a couple of big home runs. And I've learned from every failure. And
I love it.
All along, the people that I've met, whether I was winning or losing, had equal value to me. And so I'm super blessed that, like you said, I get to work with my sons now. I have unbelievable business relationships, some that we know together, some, and, if you look back and you can add value every single day, which 100%. Is what was our mantra, I do it and I get rewarded for it. Yeah. And, I'm super happy, dude.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, let's take it back to the Renegade days. Tell us about the Renegade days.
Oh my God. So I was fortunate to represent a line of jeans back in the day called Edwin jeans. And most young people wouldn't know that, but that was like the first.
Are they in the Z Cavarici? What era are we in? Are we in the Cavarici conversation?
So I knew Jim Cavarici. Yeah. Jim Cavarici was an actual guy.
His first name was Jim. I would never think that Cavaricci's first name would be Jim. I thought it'd be like Antony or some kind of Italian. Jim. It's like Bob Cavarici. Okay, that's a fun fact. Right. Fun fact.
That is so cool. I had no idea that you'd be bringing up that dialogue, but that's a perfect example of where, I was, working with a line of jeans. I covered the entire Southeast. I did most of my business with 2 major retailers, but I had to get in the car and I had to travel, and everybody thought it was really sexy, which is really a misnomer of most businesses.
Oh.
It's not sexy. It's really about
Cheap
doing the reps and
motels
putting in. Yeah.
yeah.
Did we have good times? Listen, I remember when Tommy Hilfiger was the sock buyer from Morona, so those were fun times, that I just learned how to, take advantage of everything at my disposal. And the most valuable asset of every step of my life has always been the people I get to meet, and I make the most of it, so.
And I think that's why you and I are talking right now, and we'll certainly dig into the power of relationships. I mean, every single success I have is predicated on relationships and not burning bridges and holding a value to them. But instead of all the good stuff, let's rewind and talk about some early career failures, because I think that's really critical to kind of set everything up here, right? Is learning from those early mistakes. Bring us back to a couple of those like early mistakes that you had where you course corrected, you learned from them, and you're really building on those, looking back over the last 20 plus years.
So, my as I said, my parents were in the ladies' shoe business. They were ready to retire. I was ready to take over the business, and was really probably bigger in ego and stature than I was ready for. But I took it on. I realized I was not capable of dealing with circumstances, which happen in every business. There's always things that happen. The pandemic now is a circumstance.
Exactly.
I've dealt with so many in my career. I wasn't prepared to do that, and so it failed. And what did I take away from that was I was willing to look at everything that I didn't do. For me, the biggest takeaway was that there's always mentorship at any given level, that if you're willing to ask, there's somebody who's been there before who will say, hey, listen, I'll send the elevator back down. Here's what I know, and here's how to avoid that.
Paying it forward.
So I think, entrepreneurs or salespeople think that it's all about doing it themselves. Nobody ever does it on their own. There's always somebody or a group of somebodies that influence your life and your career. I just got good at asking, like, wow, I'm way over my head here. What do I do? What would you have done? And so, I think I put together what I think is a master's degree in life, the things I've learned. One of those is I'm insatiably curious. I really want to listen and learn, and
Inquisitivity, being inquisitive is such an underrated, powerful skill in a human being, right? Being always asking the whys and the hows, and coming from a smart angle and a perspective of, I want to learn more. I want to know what this means. Were you, going back to the day when your parents had the shoe store, what would you learn from them? Were you open to learning? Did you like pick things up? I mean, what were some of those things that you kind of walked away with?
Well, so I initially just loved the interaction. I loved the fashion part of the business. And so I was getting fed in a couple of different ways, but I really was a little closed off to learning because ego gets in the way. You think, wow, I know it all. This is a breeze. I can do it. What took somebody 30 years to do, I'm already doing because I had early success, and early success is just a bad tonic, man. It does set you up for failure quickly. It turned out to be a blessing for me, but if you really, could go back and rewrite the script, I would have learned more and said, this is how I taught my son, Mark, this intern mentality. Just show up as if you know nothing, take it all in, and then digest it and do it for yourself. And I'm that way to this day. I speak to people and I said, just basically educate me on why you think this is so great, and where are you positioning yourself? How did you get there? What's your passion? Simon Sinek made the why famous, but purpose has been, purpose and passion are two of the biggest drivers for success.
Right.
If you're doing something you hate, it's gonna be hard to be really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I want to kind of hit on something. I'm going to go off script for a minute here, right? And I want to talk about, I see it a lot with young folks where they, especially with social media, where they're getting like Insta famous, LinkedIn famous so quickly, and their ego is getting ahead of them, right? And they got some good wins. They're picking up, they're building up this social proof, but their ego is getting way ahead of them, and they're about to get shot down pretty quickly. Do you think these are lessons that they need to learn on the job right now, or is it something that they could do to course correct and be a little bit more humble and open to learning?
So I think this pandemic is going to do lots of stuff, but I think there's going to be lots of learnings that come from it. And one of those is for younger people who are like, holy shit, what's happening? Like the world is crumbling, 20 million people without a job, So I learned this early on, that whatever is just, it is for a short time. It's not forever. So you have to constantly be innovating, constantly be learning, constantly keep your eyes on the road ahead of you. And I think, to your point, some people get to a place where, and I think this was really true of me early in my career. Somebody gave me a book called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. I was making more money at one point in my career than I ever thought I could make. It was unbelievable. I could buy anything, drive anything, but I was miserable. I really didn't like it. And it wasn't working necessarily with people I wanted to work with, or doing, anything that had any further value than just cashing checks. And you know what? It led to me making a career change at 34, where everybody around me looked at me like they said, dude, you're on top of the world. What are you doing? And I go, you think I'm on top of the world, but I got to get up every morning and sort of trudge through this.
It's optics, right? Like what people see on the outside, they have no clue what's happening on the inside. And it's so interesting too. We were talking, before we went on air, my pivot was at the age of 35, and it's such an interesting age looking back at it, right? Like you're young enough where you could make changes and still have plenty of, road ahead of you, but you also could look back in that rearview mirror and see what happened before and learn from that. Right. I mean, I am grateful for my pivot at 35. So let's fast forward a little bit too. I love that you're an optimist. I love that you also have a positive opportunist mindset, which is, I think, certainly important, and always finding opportunities. And you talk a lot about, your 27 core leadership rules of engagement, right, in your book. And we're not going to go through all 27 right now, but like I want to highlight a couple of like those really key rules, and let's unpack them. I'll let you tell me which ones are like important now, the ones that we really should be focusing on.
Great. So the rule that is most talked about, and there's a lot of them, but most people are trained when they greet people with, hey, how you doing? How are you? And that's basically an invitation for someone to take the monkey off of their back and put it on yours. Oh, my car, my house, my boss, whatever complaining, whatever soundtrack that is going on in their mind. And I've learned this in all of the training that I've done. Most people are just programmed negative. It's the first thing that comes to their mind.
Right. Just to bitch to other people.
Right. We shifted that behavior early in my sales career. And I say we because I've always worked with groups and whatever. And I said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to stand out. When we greet somebody, we're going to say, hey, tell me something good. And most people go to that Shaka Khan song, which is kind of cool. That'll be a gift for people the whole day. They'll be humming them. But you'll be surprised that people stop in their tracks and go, they can't even think of something good. When they think of something good, boom, whatever they tell you at that moment is what's important to them and what makes them feel good. And the more you make somebody feel good, the more they want you around. So it became very self-fulfilling that it was like, wow, like if you call my voicemail, which I give out my cell number to everybody, I don't care. They call, the voicemail says, hey, this is Steve, tell me something good. Well, it's hilarious because I don't always get good news, but the person on the other end is kind of fumphering around going, well, I got good news, I got bad news, So.
And if we're thinking about it from a sales perspective too, now you're changing their mindset to be in a positive mindset, to be more open and perceptive, which is what we're leading to. Right. And I think the problem with so many people, I mean, this is a tough one too. I think that there's so many amazing old school sales strategies and tactics that still apply today. And you got to put like the modern empathetic social spin on it too. But like, how have you kind of seen this transition? I mean, you've been in sales then, you've been in sales now, like what's working, what's not working? How are you teaching this?
So I think one of the challenges that people have is they're looking for a silver bullet. There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing, hey, pay me this chunk of money and I'm going to make you a great salesperson. No. That doesn't exist. It's figuring out a process. investing the time and energy to physically do the process, physically and mentally. And then you figure out along the way what works and what doesn't. So I think sales today is the perfect fusion of what I learned at retail about how to deal with people and just using new school, new age tools.
Right.
And so, I think one of the things that I learned in retail was how to think on my feet and have a real-time conversation with somebody. Well, if you are not trained in building and maintaining relationships, guess what? Social media is going to suck for you, because then it's just superficial. It's just, it's up in the air. I have been able to make meaningful relationships with people all over the globe because that's what I want to do. I don't want to sell them. I want to have genuine relationships that spin back, that say, hey, wait a minute, you're really good at this. How can you help my company?
Yeah. I mean, the disconnect now on social media is everyone's going for these quick wins. They're going for these quick, short-term transactional. And I think that the idea of building a relationship, long-lasting conversations, don't go in for the sell right away. Learn what someone's pain points are. Be a solutions provider, right? Come up with solutions instead of going for the hard sell. I think that's being lost around a lot of the young people these days. Are you seeing that?
Well, first of all, it's lost across everybody. I think this pandemic is pushing people into virtual relationship building with it, which is a skill set, and some people have it.
Some people suck at it.
Some people suck at it, and they're going to have to get really good. But fundamentally, I legitimately don't care if I interact with you and you buy from me, because my mind is, and one of the rules in my book, which I wasn't going to talk about, but
go for it.
It's called the Paul Revere method. Paul Revere didn't go down the road saying, hey, I'm going to tell you the British are coming, but I'm not going to tell you. I just tell everybody, hey, listen, let's connect. Let's see how we, oh, you like the Mets? I like the Mets. Oh, you like a bagel? I like a bagel. Oh, we become friends. Two things can happen. You can buy from me, or you can turn me on to somebody who can.
Exactly.
Wow. Seems pretty simple to me.
It's not rocket science.
I don't get it. And have fun along the way. Some of the best relationships I have never bought from me. Never will. Doesn't matter. It's like
that's not the point of it.
That's not how I'm keeping score, right? So it's like,
and people need to understand the conduit concept, right? And that's something that I talk about too. And I think we're on the same page with that, right? Like, I may be connected with you, and you and I may never do an ounce of business, Steve, at all. But you're going to open me up, say, hey, listen, I just had a great show with Adam. He seems like a good dude. He's a recruiter. I'm going to introduce him to somebody else who might need his business. Right? The conduit aspect of relationships is being lost. Well, people are looking so short term, only at that first connection. They're not looking at the second, the third, digging into people's networks. It's unbelievable.
So, the paradigm shift is so significant. Most of the time when people introduce themselves, they tell you what they do. Hi, I'm an accountant. Okay. That puts you in the field with millions of other people that are accountants. What makes you different? So what social media allows you to do is to promote who you are, not what you do. And people buy from people they know, like, and trust. Pretty simple, basic, old school. Well, now you have so many more ways to create awareness for yourself. You 100%. Created this podcast. You're putting out good stuff that has no sell associated with it, other than, hey, I'm going to put out some good stuff so that you know who I am.
It's branding.
The time and patience it takes to do that without the immediate reward is really where the payoff is that you said, okay, cool. However long this takes, even if I never get a sale from it, it's good stuff. I'm meeting good people. We're putting good stuff out there. That's where, some people connect with me, and the next message is, by the way, I have the best thing since sliced bread, and you're perfect for it. You should buy it.
I hate that.
I should. I'm like, what?
Yeah. It's interesting too. I mean, I talk about the podcast a lot too, and I have a lot of people, the podcast is picking up speed. As I mentioned, we're approaching 100 episodes. I'm the guests, the audience, everything's building up, and people are telling me, look, what's your goal with the podcast? And I go, listen, you know what? I'm not pushing this thing to be a Joe Rogan, advertisers. That's not what I'm doing. For me, there's two things that come out of this podcast. One, I get to talk to great folks like yourself, and it's a learning opportunity for me and building relationships, right? Number two, it's a biz dev perspective from a branding angle, right? Everyone out there sees that I'm, showcasing this. I have my expertise. I have a platform for my thought leadership. And also I get to schedule and book business opportunities, business leads that otherwise would not respond to a cold email, a phone call, but they're more inclined to come on my show for an hour and talk to me like we are. And now we have a relationship, and that's what it's all about. I don't even keep it a secret because I want everyone to try this. It's hard to execute. Easy to say, hard to execute.
Correct. But the barrier to entry is fairly low. Anybody could do it.
Do a podcast.
When I first started investing, so I had an agency for 25 years, very successful. We were in sports. We have lots of great relationships. We've sort of pivoted, or, whatever the new sexy word is, we moved into different things that we did. But fundamentally, we always had a value proposition. Well, when I invested in social media 5 or 6 years ago, and the current thinking at the time was you should just share what you know. I was like, what are you, out of your mind? It took me 40 years to develop all this stuff. I'm not just going to give it away. And you know what? The more I give it away, which I do every day, I am constantly giving everything I know. If anybody asks, I give it to them, the more they buy. It's like, wow, you want to talk about a shift, give to get, which is the other rule in my book. When I would be in sales, and I don't know how I came up with this, it just was organic to me. I'd sit across from somebody like you tell me a few sentences about your business, and I would go, hey, you know what? You should meet my friend Steve. He's got something you guys should really meet. So I would give them an introduction up front. They would look at me like I had horns. They would go like, what are you doing? You're introducing me to somebody and we're not currently doing business? I say, listen, I'm going to put a lot of good out there, and it'll come back to me somehow, some way, without keeping score. And God, it's been what a ride. What a ride.
But I mean, that's crazy too. I mean, I see it all over now. Everyone's keeping score. They're concerned with their likes and their following, their comments and everything. That doesn't mean shit. You know what means something? Your relationship means something, and your checkbook means something. Those are the two things there, right? You could drive all these conversations, you could figure it out, blah, blah, blah. I got eyeballs and this and there. But if you're not converting on them, and you're not converting relationships, and you're not converting sales, what's the matter?
So you bring up an awesome point, lots of awesome points, and congratulations. I love what you're doing. You've done your homework and stuff like that. One of the biggest challenges that I faced early on when I was starting to coach people in sales management was they were like, how do you keep track of it? How do you know that somebody's actually doing the work? Because, I could see that they did 50 cold calls. I could see they knocked on 50 doors. That old trick come back. There was some metric that was accepted, KPIs that worked. It took me a long time to create my own KPI to say, all right, I got to figure it out for me first before I can train somebody on it. And the KPI is, how many connections are you turning into conversations? And C2C is trackable. And you know what? By doing that, all of a sudden the funnel flipped upside down and business is inbound. Yep. I mean, I'm in sales for 40 years. Nobody ever knocked on my door and said, Steve, here's a bucket of money. Can you help us spend it? I mean, that was ridiculous. Happens all the time now. Happens all the time. Hey, I got a problem. I've chosen you as the guy that can help me fix it. So,
and why do you think that's happening? It's because you're investing in social and you're putting yourself out there and you're giving. It's all about adding value, and it's not rocket science, and it's being real. And dude, you have so much expertise and just life experience to share that's so valuable for everybody out there. Let's make a little shift to talk about LinkedIn, right? You guys do, sales training on LinkedIn, and we're not talking about the sales training where it's formulaic and, you're trying to get somebody into these like engagement pods and all this other BS techniques that mean jack shit there. But we're talking about real sales on LinkedIn, because let's be honest, I mean, that's what the platform was built on. It was about jobs and opportunities and connecting. So take us a little bit behind the scenes, and how is your program different than all the other ones that are out there?
So I think it fundamentally speaks to who I am in the marketplace. So I'll back up for 1 second.
Sure.
I noticed early on that all of a sudden everybody's a coach. They're a life coach, there's a financial coach.
Don't get me started.
I mean, like, wait a minute, would you get in the car with somebody who's never driven? Don't think so. So no qualification. I'm hanging out my shingle. Yeah. I'm a coach.
I'm going to pause on my rant. Everyone knows where I stand on this. So I'm going to sit back and listen to Steve on this one.
So I found it fascinating. So I changed my tagline to sales doer. Every single thing that I teach in LinkedIn, I do myself. I figured it out for myself. I didn't need LinkedIn. I didn't need, anybody to teach me the
Coaches.
mechanics. I want to do it the finesse way. This allowed me to build relationships at scale and maintain them. And so I teach people the keys to success in using this unbelievable platform that if you do it right, and the best example, which I love talking about, is my son. My son was, who did your show, 10 years in college football coaching, not selling.
Yeah.
Right.
He was a football coach.
Yeah. He says to me, Dad, I'm done. I want out. He goes, please, I want to make a change. I want to get into sales. I go, listen, it's not that easy. P.S. I was able to introduce him to some people. He was able to talk his way into a really cool position with ESPN Palm Beach. And he looked at me and he goes, Dad, they trained me on the product, which is what most training is, features and benefits. There was no training on how the hell do I do this? He was a process guy in football. Every practice, every football player, every basketball player has a rhythm, has a process of what they do. I taught him the process of how to use LinkedIn to build his audience. And all of a sudden, his audience started working for him. He was nominated for Rookie of the Year. He's now the president of our company,
doing great,
driving it because, and you've seen him, you said he's the genuine deal. Business is inbound to him because
authenticity shines. You can't make this shit up.
You can't fake it.
You can't fake it. So let's talk about working with your son, right? Is this what it was all about? When your parents had the shoe store, when you were growing up, did you ever even have an inkling? It's crazy. I think about it now, I'm looking at my son who's 2 years old. I'm like, one day am I going to be working with, give us a little bit of that parent mentality thoughts as well, and take us to that relationship.
I love to, so part of this dream was, and I think parents, need to take a look at this. It was his life, not my life. I think a parent's job is to build the character in your kids so that they can go out and do whatever they want to do, not what you want to do. So, when he went down this coaching road, for me, it was very exciting. And over the years, he's coached with some great coaches. He's been in buildings with 100,000 people where I've been there and been on the field. It was fun and it was sexy, but it did not match my dream of working with him because I found him to have all of the skill sets to be really, really good at selling himself and then teaching people. That's what college football coaching is teaching people. He had to come to that on his own. So when he did, and now that we are working together, I pinch myself every day because it's bizarre, but we were very pragmatic about the pitfalls. Still his dad. Mm-hmm. So, nobody, the common theory is, oh, your dad's picking you up and saving your ass. Well, that was clearly not the case here. And then I said to him, I said, listen, I don't want you to work for me. My career is in a different place. If you want to jump into the driver's seat and on the ball, you got to show me how you're going to do that. I built a reputation for 27 years in this business. Show me what that looks like, put it in writing. And so while I was doing my due diligence, he did his due diligence. I got calls after he went to his, people that I know and people I worked with and said, hey, listen, what's it going to be like for me to work with my dad, man? I am hyper-driven, hyper-focused, and I don't make excuses. Well, if he was looking for a place to coast, this would not have been that. So we were very eyeballs open about what this could look like. And then, the proof is in the pudding. We made plans to do it. April 1st was going to be his kickoff date, which we thought we'd make fun of April Fools. Oh, my God, who would think it was a joke and who wouldn't? And then he looked at me a week before and he said, Dad, with this COVID stuff, he goes, my timing is so bad. And I actually told him, I don't agree with you. I think the timing is perfect because everybody's at the starting line now.
Yeah, I agree. And he's shining now. But take us back to that first real fight that you guys had as working together.
So we have yet to have a fight working together because
maybe
it's
something
still
personal
new.
That kind of flowed over.
New. But we've had some real deep, deep, they would be not classified as arguments. They would be, defining moments where I said, hey, listen, dude, that's just not how we play.
Yeah.
And up until now in his life at 33, there was a time when I had to help him maneuver through bad decisions. And I felt like I felt that was my responsibility, and I was willing to have him hate me at the time for it. And it brings me back to when I joined my dad's business. This is a really cool story.
Yeah,
we went to the show where all of the shoe manufacturers were showing. We were buying shoes all day, and I was really having fun. Well, I connected with a couple of the guys in the space, and they go, come on, man, we're going out tonight. Come with us. The manufacturers usually take, the retailers out. Well, we didn't go out. We went out,
Right. Back when there was no cell phone cameras.
Out.
Things were much more fun without cameras around everywhere.
Correct. Well, that following morning, I was destroyed. Knock on my door. My dad's knocking on the door. And I said, I have a bad stomach. I'm not going to make it. Put my head under the pillow again. Next thing you know, manager's opening the door. My dad grabs me, throws me in the shower, and said,
oh, God.
You are going to this event, whether you like it or not, because you will learn that you could do whatever you want, but you have to show up. And I mean, literally that day, I'll never forget it, because I was green, and all the people I was out with were like kind of laughing at me. They go, dude, you're going to be okay?
Step up,
but
rookie.
It taught me a lesson. Step up, rookie. Well, I had to do that with my son. This is the way we play. We built a reputation for who we are, how we show up. And the people that know me know that I'm a man of my word. I have integrity. I have this thing called the say-do ratio.
Tell us
and
about that.
if it's anything other than 1-to-1, so lots of people say shit all day long.
Of course.
It's easy to say, and then they think other people will forget. They don't. So if you're willing to look at your say-do ratio, if it's anything other than 1-to-1, I said this, I did this. I said this, I did this. If it's anything other than that, you're losing ground on your own integrity. You're cheating yourself. And so that's how we are. I
100% agreed with that. And I hold myself at such a high standard too, to be careful what comes out of my mouth to make sure that I could deliver on it. Right. And I always say under promise, over deliver. And it's really mindful about what you say to people and making sure that you could back it up with action in your personal life and in your professional life. A couple of quick things here from your son, Mark, who's chiming in, just talking about how you set the bar higher than anyone he could or whoever worked with. He also says, you guys have had some tough conversations throughout your entire life. So it's not anything new. You guys are in a place where you could have that, and open communication, which makes it a conversation and not a fight. And I think, that's a skill that applies to any piece of business, right? And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, leadership and, managing through a crisis. And it's not just about survival, but it's about, setting the tone, and really just being, having that, you're looking ahead, we're going to get through this, things are going to be different, but let's just get your approach on leadership here.
So I tend to look at leadership through a personal lens first. I think people need to look at themselves as the CEO of their own life, which will dictate their own decisions before they take care of everybody else. And when we used to fly, the first thing they told you is that if the mask comes down, put yours on first before you go taking care of everybody else. That was sort of a metaphor for me to understand. You got to take care of yourself. If you're, if you get hurt, if you're not out in front of it yourself, it's going to be hard to really teach other people, so I've always set the bar high for myself. I always looked at my decisions. Not all of them were good. I mean, I think the people who work for me in the cell phone business, which was one of my bigger plays early in my life, they would tell you, man, Steve, you were the biggest prick I ever knew, because it was all about me, not about them. Leadership really now is all about them. How can I make them better? And you sort of got to come to a place in your life where you're okay with them getting better, which for me, I was always threatened by that. Well, we live in an abundant world. There's enough success for everybody if you're willing to scratch and claw to get your own. So when I talk about leadership, leadership is helping people define action at a time of crisis. So like my phone lit up when this whole thing, happened, and sales leaders and CEOs were calling me. They go, "What do we do?" And I gave them my opinion. Never, ever, ever been a better time to prospect. And I put a video out like that, and they were like, "Really? How insensitive can you be?" And I go, "I didn't say sell. I said prospect, research, ask people how you can help, build your garden, because when we come out of this, which we're starting to peel out of it, very much like 9/11. Listen, I was in sports hospitality back then. We did more in the Super Bowl than we did all year. Well, there was nobody talking about the Super Bowl after 9/11. It was over, So what you learn that these things are cycles. You get better at planning. This one nobody ever saw coming, but here was the leadership advice I gave. I said, focus on the one thing you do really, really well and do that. Forget about the economics, just do that. And people went, holy shit, dude, that's brilliant. That's what I did. I know how to take people into a virtual environment. Been preaching it for years. Nobody listened to me because they were stuck in their old ways. All of a sudden, here's a crisis, shakes people up, puts them in a new way. I think the sales world will never be the same because sales management didn't trust people to work remotely. Got no choice now, and it's working.
You got to trust your people. You got to trust your people. Yeah, and I love it, man. And a couple things, just to kind of, touch on there, and we'll talk about managing the clock. That's something I'm doing now, managing the clock. But you hit on something with the airplane analogy that, Dave Meltzer said to me, somebody that I hold in a pretty high regard. He said to me in early March, right when this thing was coming on, he used that same analogy, and it really resonated with me. And that's something that I've been repeating daily, right? Like, take care of myself, be my best self so I can be best for everybody. I mean, that's critical too. And the other word, which keeps coming up in my head that I repeat daily, is be invaluable. Be invaluable. When you're in sales right now, if you can't make those sales, whether it be your industry or some other logistical reason you can't be, what other value can you give to your clients that's not trying to sell them shit, right? How else could you consult on their business, find their white spaces? They have horse blinders on. How do you look outside of that? How do you consult and add more value? So when we do come out of this, you're going to be the first person that they're going to look to.
So it's funny, we do this daily huddle in the morning, which is really our conversation about how to kickstart the day. This thing happened. We allowed people to see us doing it. We have the tools to do that. But one of the things I do is I use music to move emotionally. Changes your state of mind. Certainly Tell Me Something Good has that Chaka Khan's, background. Yeah. But I use the Beatles song, Help. We're in the help economy now. Mm-hmm. Help. I need somebody, not just anybody. Help. And the way
Beatles know everything. They're so ahead of their time.
Unbelievable. They were so hip. I mean, we just watched another a documentary on Netflix about them that was so real and so genuine. They had no idea what hit them, but their words are so powerful. And legitimately, if you reach out to somebody and go, how can I help? Who can I introduce you to? To your point, they don't forget, but it has to be genuine. You can't go, hey, how can I help? And oh, by the way, we have a special on this. What? That's incongruent with what you started.
It's tone deaf. It's tone deaf. So Steve, let's bring it home here, man. Let's bring it home. And I have a series of questions that I'd love to ask every guest. As I mentioned before, this is my time to learn, right? This is my selfish, I'm going to learn from awesome people like Steve Nudelberg. What is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
Single greatest advice. Wouldn't it be a shame to be climbing the corporate ladder just to realize it's leaning against the wrong building?
That's a good one.
It's the whole mentality of, there is a book that says, do what you love and the money will follow. I am having the greatest time of my life sharing my gift. And you know what? There's more riches in that are not just money riches. And I think we were programmed, go get the money, go get the car, go get the house, go get the shit that you can show everybody else how great you're doing, but you're miserable. If you do what you love, there's so much energy and so much passion in that's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. So Steve Nudelberg, now it's time for you to tell me something good here. Tell me an amazing silver lining, a professional silver lining, and a personal silver lining that you've experienced over the last 2 months. Tell me something good, man.
Over the last 2 months.
Yes. So silver linings during COVID.
So you'll love this, being a New Yorker. I got somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn. They wanted to connect. They sent no note, no nothing up front. I don't just accept invites. So I said, hey, thanks. Like, what are you thinking? What do you want to do? And he said, I saw some of the stuff you're putting out on LinkedIn. It's spectacular. I need somebody to kick me in the ass, and I want you to do that. And I was like, okay, why don't we set up a virtual coffee? Right. We did. I do it through Zoom, been doing it through Zoom long before this pandemic. And wouldn't you know, he's based in Denver. When we try and do it, his internet went out. He couldn't do it. We had to use the phone. Imagine this.
The old phone call.
Oh my God, we had to use the phone. 90 minutes on the phone, just connecting, having a great time. And wouldn't you know that blue suede Pumas came up in the conversation. So I don't know if you're old enough to remember blue suede Pumas, but Walt Frazier, who played for the Knicks, that was his signature sneaker. When I played basketball as a young kid, it made me better. That and Pete Maravich socks. The moral of the story is we get on talking about all of the commonalities. I hadn't thought about blue suede Pumas in forever. He says, listen, this has been fantastic. What does it take to work with you? So he hires me as a CEO coach. We get off the phone. I go on Amazon. I buy a pair of blue suede Pumas. I sent him a note. I said, by the way, what shoe size do you wear? And he was like, question mark. He goes, 10.5. I sent him blue suede Pumas. I made a friend for life. Forget about whether I coach him for a month, a week. You know, it all came. It all came in, and I'm so grateful for making a friend that, you know, that's where the riches are. So it's a real story. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see he's the CEO of an big architectural firm in Denver. And it's never too old to teach. You can teach new tricks to an old dog.
I love it, man. And being receptive to coaching. I mean, that's another point that's kind of coming through here. I mean, everyone talks about Tiger Woods has a coach, Serena Williams, all these top athletes and performers. They all have coaches. Who do you think is coaching them, right? But again, you know, you want to make sure that you're checking references on that. So, Steve, last but not least, right? You've been through it, the ups and downs of life, man. You've seen the top of the mountain. You've seen the bottom of that hole. You've kind of been in every possible situation, right? So when you've been down at your lowest and you've had to look up, right, and you needed something to pull you through. And on the other side of that, when you're sitting at the top, you're working with your son, business is flying, life is good. You feel like you haven't worked a single day in your life. What do you look to for gratitude? Steve Nudelberg, what is your North Star?
So the reason why I wrote the book, Confessions of a Serial Salesman, is people have asked me that question my whole life. They said, dude, you've reinvented yourself more than anybody I've ever seen. You seem to be a thought leader. You're on the front end of all of these movements. How do you do that? You do it with process. You figure out what works and you repeat it every day. It's boring. It's mundane. It's not sexy. But my rules, my 27 rules, when it's not working, I go back to the rules and go, what am I not doing? What did I, you know, and it inevitably, it's something I'm eating or not eating, something I'm not doing. I wake up early. You know, it's the first rule in the book. Early is different for everybody. But all of these rules are part of my process, that the further I get away from it. And if you ask any great athlete, if you ask Tom Brady at 41, how is he still able to play? Because he has a process. He takes care of his mind, takes care of his body, and the results are there. So he doesn't watch the scoreboard. He plays every down.
Yeah, I love it, man. Steve, thank you for joining us today and making time. I mean, this was absolutely incredible, and I appreciate you, man.
You're awesome. I mean, listen, part of the gift that social media has done is allowed this. This was a meaningful conversation. I got to learn more about you. I have no doubt that we're going to be friends and refer people. And, you welcome quality people into your life every day, and you watch what the results do.
I go by plan your work and work your plan every morning. Plan your work and work your plan. I repeat it. Steve, thank you. Where could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Drop the podcast, drop the book. Tell us everything. Tell us something good about all that good stuff.
I was given a gift with a last name, Nudelberg. There are not going to be many of them. Mark has jumped into space, so now there's 2 that you could probably find at the top of the social media funnel, but it's at Nudelberg across every social media platform. I actually answer all of my own social media. I answer all of my own emails. My phone number is posted in my contact information. So if you text me or call me, you're going to get me. And you know what? I give, and in return I get. So we do a morning daily huddle. There's no restrictions. Catch us on LinkedIn or on Facebook. We have a Facebook group where I post, more follow-up information. And then in the afternoons, I do a show called Tell Me Something Good, which you promised you would do.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And it's a 15, 20-minute interview that's all about you. Tell me something good that's going on. There's too many other people talking negative shit. Just tell me good. Tell me something good.
I love it, man. Steve Nudelberg, thank you for coming on with us today. I appreciate you, my man.
Yes, sir.
And everybody who's been joining us live, everyone who's going to be joining us on the replay and checking us out on the podcast, thank you for hanging out with us. You know where to follow us, all the social media channels, more episodes on www. I don't know if I said enough. www.thepodcast.com. Remember, take your online connections offline, real meaningful relationships. Steve and I could preach this all day long. I appreciate you, Steve. I appreciate everyone listening. Take care, wash your hands, be good to each other, and catch us next week for another great episode of the Podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.